This is not a story about anger. It is a story about fear, love, the quiet battles people fight inside their hearts. When he falls in love with Mara, he believes he has found peace. But as their relationship grows, he begins to notice something deeply unsettling. She reacts harshly to every person who comes close to him. Friends fade away. Family dinners grow cold. Slowly, without realizing it, he starts losing pieces of his own life in the process of holding their relationship together. What follows is a powerful journey through trust, emotional wounds, and the difficult truth that love cannot survive on devotion alone. As hidden fears rise to the surface, both of them must decide whether they are willing to change, heal, and grow, or remain trapped in the shadows of their past. This story explores how love can be tested, how people can hurt without meaning to, and how sometimes the bravest thing that people can do is face the truth together, from the outside. Everything about their relationship looked normal, even happy. People saw them holding hands in grocery store lines, laughing in coffee shops, walking together in the park on Sunday mornings. But beneath that calm picture, something strange and heavy had already started growing, and he felt it every single day. It began during their second week together. They were standing in line at a small bakery near his apartment. He had introduced her to the cashier, a friendly older woman who always remembered his name. The woman smiled warmly and said, "Good to see you again," smiled back. But when he looked at Mara, her face had changed. Her jaw tightened. Her eyes narrowed. She let out a low sound through her nose, not loud enough for the cashier to hear, but enough for him to notice. It wasn't quite a word, not quite a breath. It sounded like irritation, maybe even anger. He thought nothing of it at first. Everyone has bad days, but then it happened again and again. When his friend Jake joined them for lunch one afternoon, Mara barely spoke. She sat with her arms crossed, her foot tapping, her eyes following every move Jake made. When Jake laughed at one of his jokes, Mara's mouth curled slightly as if she had tasted something unpleasant. Later, when Jake left, Mara said, "I don't like him." He asked why. She shrugged. "Just don't." That answer stayed with him longer than he expected. Over the next few weeks, he began noticing the pattern. Every time another person came close to him, Mara changed. Her body grew stiff. Her voice turned sharp. Sometimes, she muttered comments under her breath that he pretended not to hear. Sometimes she simply went quiet, the air around her turning cold and heavy. It wasn't just his friends at work. He introduced her to a coworker named Lily, someone he had known for years. Lily was kind, always cheerful, and genuinely happy to meet Mara. But the moment Lily shook her hand, Mara pulled back slightly, her lips pressed together tight. When Lily walked away, Mara said, "She seems fake." He was confused. "She's not fake. She's just friendly." Mara didn't answer. She just stared at the floor. The strange part was that Mara was not rude in obvious ways. She didn't shout. She didn't insult people directly. But her energy shifted the moment someone entered his space. It was as if she felt attacked by the simple presence of another human being. Soon, others noticed his friends started acting differently when Mara was around. They spoke less. They left earlier. Some stopped coming at all. His sister, who normally loved everyone he dated, called him one night and said carefully, "Is she upset with me?" He didn't know what to say. He kept telling himself it was temporary. Maybe Mara was shy. Maybe she had trouble opening up. Maybe she just needed time, but time only made it worse. One evening, he invited a few people over to watch a movie. Nothing big, just pizza, popcorn, and a couch full of laughter. The moment the door opened and his guests stepped inside, Mara's mood shifted like a storm cloud. She barely said hello. She sat beside him, stiff as stone. Her eyes fixed on the screen, not laughing when others laughed, not reacting when they spoke to her. After the movie, as people began leaving, he noticed that the room felt lighter with every goodbye. When the last guest closed the door behind them, Mara turned to him and said, "I don't want them coming here again." He stared at her. "Why?" "I just don't." The answer again. That night, he lay awake beside her, staring at the ceiling. His mind replayed every strange moment, every cold look, every quiet comment. He cared about her deeply. There was so much good in her. She was thoughtful with him, gentle, loyal. She listened to him in ways no one ever had before. When it was just the two of them, everything felt safe and warm. But when other people entered the picture, the warmth vanished. He felt torn in two directions. On one side was his love for Mara. On the other was his entire world, his friends, his family, the people who had known him long before she ever had. He didn't want to choose. He didn't think he should have to. Still, the pressure grew. People stopped inviting him out. They said he was busy or probably with Mara. When he went alone, Mara became distant, quiet, hurt. When he stayed with her, he felt guilty and isolated. Slowly, almost without noticing, he began to change his behavior. He declined invitations. He shortened phone calls. He made excuses. He chose quiet nights in with her instead of loud evenings with everyone else. Not because she demanded it, but because he wanted peace. He wanted the calm back. But the calm never lasted. Even a simple greeting from a neighbor could cause tension. Once, a man in the elevator made casual conversation about the weather. When they reached their floor and the doors closed, Mara said, "Why was he staring at you?" "He wasn't," he answered. "You didn't see his face." He didn't argue. The hardest part was that he truly did not understand why this was happening. He asked himself over and over what he might be doing wrong. Was he too friendly? Too open? Was he giving people the wrong impression? He began watching himself carefully, as if any small movement might trigger something in her. He laughed less loudly. He spoke more quietly. He avoided eye contact with strangers. He changed, slowly, to protect something fragile he did not fully understand. One afternoon, his mother invited them for dinner. He almost said no, but he missed home. He missed being around people who knew him as more than just someone's partner. At dinner, his mother was warm and kind, asking Mara about her childhood, her work, her dreams. Mara answered politely, but her shoulders were tight, her hands clenched under the table. When his mother reached out and touched Mara's arm gently, just for a moment, Mara pulled away. The room went silent. No one said anything, but everyone felt it. On the drive home, he finally spoke. "Why do you act like this around people I care about?" Mara looked out the window. "They make me uncomfortable. Why?" She didn't answer. He realized then how alone he was starting to feel. He loved her, yet he was drifting away from everyone else. He was carrying the weight of both sides, trying to keep everything together while quietly losing pieces of himself. That night, as she slept beside him, he stared at the wall and whispered into the dark, "I don't know why you hate everyone around me, but I hope one day I will." And with that thought, the real story of them had only just begun. After that night, nothing felt simple anymore. He began paying closer attention to everything Mara did. It's not because he wanted to judge her, but because he wanted to understand her. Every small reaction, every shift in her voice, every quiet moment when her eyes darkened, he watched it all, hoping the pieces would finally connect. But instead of answers, the situation only grew heavier. A few days later, his coworker Lily invited him to join a small team lunch after work. He hesitated before answering. He thought about Mara sitting alone at home, about the cold silence that sometimes followed when he chose anyone else over her. Still, he agreed to go. He told himself it was healthy. He told himself relationships needed balance. When he mentioned it to Mara, her smile did not reach her eyes. "Who's going?" she asked. "Just some people from the office." "Lily." "Yes," her jaw tightened. "Why do you have to go?" "It's just lunch." She didn't reply. She picked up her phone and scrolled, the room suddenly feeling smaller. During the lunch, he checked his phone more than he talked. No messages. No missed calls. But a strange pressure sat in his chest the entire time. He laughed when others laughed, but it felt forced. He left early. When he reached home, Mara was sitting on the couch, staring at the wall. "You're back early," she said. He nodded. "Yeah. She stood and walked into the bedroom without another word. That pattern became their new normal. Any time he spent with others, something quiet and painful followed. Not loud arguments. Not dramatic scenes. Just distance, silence. Cold air between them. Weeks passed like this. His friends began to drift. One of them, Jake, finally said, "Man, we never see you anymore." He wanted to explain, but he didn't know how without making Mara sound bad, and he didn't believe she was bad. She was hurting. That much was clear. The hardest moment came at his sister's birthday. He almost didn't bring Mara. He worried how the night would go. But he also hoped, foolishly, that this time would be different. At first it was calm. His sister smiled, hugged them both. The room was full of music and warm light. Everyone tried to include Mara in conversations. She answered politely, but briefly, her eyes constantly moving. Watching everything then, his cousin told a story that made everyone laugh. He laughed too. It was the kind of deep laugh that came from the chest. Mara's smile vanished. On the drive home, the silence was thick. "You had fun," she finally said. "Yeah. It was a nice night with them." "Yes." She turned toward the window. "You don't laugh like that with me." He was stunned. "That's not true." She didn't respond. That night, for the first time, he felt something crack inside him. He was exhausted from carrying feelings that didn't seem to belong to him. He wanted to fix things, but he didn't even know what was broken. Days later, they went grocery shopping. An old neighbor of his greeted him in the aisle, asking how life was going. It lasted less than a minute, but the damage was done. On the walk home, Mara's voice was sharp. "You always talk too much to people. I was just being polite. You don't need to be." He stopped walking. "What do you want from me?" She looked startled. He had never raised his voice before. "I just don't want to feel invisible," she said quietly. That sentence stayed with him for days. He began seeing things differently. He noticed how her eyes followed him when he talked to anyone else. How her hands clenched when he checked his phone. How she sat closer to him in public, as if trying to protect something fragile and precious. One evening after another, long silence between them. He finally asked, "Did someone hurt you before?" She looked at him, surprised. He continued, "Because this isn't about my friends or my family. This feels like something deeper." Mara stared at the floor. For a long time, she said nothing. "I don't like being second," she whispered. "To who?" "To anyone." He sat beside her. "You're not second." She shook her head. "It always starts that way. People say you're everything. Then someone else becomes more important. Then you're alone." He wanted to argue. He wanted to promise. But he could see the fear written across her face, and it silenced him. From that night on, he stopped trying to fix everything and started trying to listen. But the strain continued. He felt himself shrinking, slowly. He canceled plans without explaining. He stayed quiet in group conversations. He chose the path that kept things calm at home, even when it made him feel smaller outside. One afternoon while cleaning, found an old photo of himself with his friends at the beach. Everyone was laughing. His smile was wide, free. Untouched by worry, he barely recognized that version of himself. He loved Mara, but he was losing pieces of the life he once had. And somewhere inside, he knew this couldn't go on like this forever. The truth did not arrive suddenly. It came slowly, in small pieces, over many quiet nights. After everything that had been building between them, he could no longer pretend nothing was wrong. He stopped pushing the problem aside and started creating space for real conversations even when they were uncomfortable. He did not accuse. He did not raise his voice. He simply asked questions and waited. One evening, they were sitting on the floor of the living room, lights off except for a small lamp. Rain tapped against the window. The world felt distant and calm. "Mara," he said softly, "I need to understand what's going on inside you." She did not answer at first. Her fingers twisted together in her lap. "I feel like I'm losing you," he continued, "and I don't even know why." Her shoulders rose and fell. She took a long breath. "You don't know how many times I've been left," she whispered. The words were quiet but heavy. He waited. She told him about growing up in a home that never felt stable. People came and went. Promises were made and broken. Every time she started trusting someone, they disappeared or changed or chose something else. She learned early that closeness was dangerous. The closer someone got, the more it hurt when they walked away. "I learned to watch for signs," she said. "I learned to protect myself." He realized then that the anger, the tension, the coldness, none of it was about his friends or family. It was about the fear that lived inside her. "I'm scared all the time," she admitted. "Every smile you give, someone else feels like the beginning of the end." He reached for her hand. "You're not being replaced," he said. "You're not being forgotten." She shook her head. "That's what they always say." That night, he understood something he had not seen before. Her behavior was not meant to push him away. It was meant to keep him close. But the fear was stronger than the love. Over the next few weeks, they talked more. About her past. About his present. About the future they both wanted but did not know how to reach. Some conversations ended in silence. Some ended in tears. Some ended with them holding each other until the sun came up. The more he learned, the more complicated everything became. He saw how deeply she cared, how much effort it took for her to trust him, how exhausting it must be to live in constant fear of being left behind. But he also saw how much of himself he had lost. One evening, after canceling another plan with friends, he caught his reflection in the mirror. His eyes looked tired. His shoulders slumped. His voice felt smaller when he spoke. He realized he was not only protecting Mara's heart, he was slowly breaking his own. A few days later, after dinner, he finally said the words he had been holding back. "I can't keep living like this." Mara froze. "I love you," he said, "but I'm disappearing." She stared at him, panic rising in her eyes. "Are you leaving?" "No," he answered, "but I can't pretend everything is fine anymore." The room went quiet. He told her how lonely he had become, how he missed his friends, how he missed laughing freely, how he missed feeling like himself. He did not blame her. He did not attack her. He simply spoke the truth. Mara's voice shook. "I don't know how to stop being afraid." "I know," he said, "but I can't keep carrying that fear for both of us." For the first time since they had been together, Mara did not defend herself. She did not turn away. She did not grow cold, she cried. Not the angry kind. Not the quiet kind. The broken, honest kind. "I don't want to lose you," she said. "Then we have to change something," he replied. That night marked the real turning point between them. They were still the same two people. Still carrying the same wounds and hopes, but now the problem stood between them instead of inside them. They started making small changes. She tried to be more open when fear rose. He tried to speak up before resentment grew. They made mistakes. They stumbled. But they kept trying. He noticed that when he went out with friends and came home, she asked questions instead of going silent. He noticed that, when his phone buzzed, she breathed through the fear instead of tightening. And she noticed that he stopped shrinking himself. The road ahead was far from easy. But for the first time, both of them were walking it with their eyes open. The changes they made helped, but they did not solve everything. Some days were calm and full of hope. Other days, the old fear crept back into the room without warning. Healing, he learned, did not move in a straight line. It wandered. It paused. It doubled back on itself. One evening, after weeks of progress, something small caused everything to shake again. He had stayed late at work finishing a project. When he arrived home, Mara was sitting on the couch, staring at her phone. She smiled when she saw him, but the smile faded quickly. "You're late," she said. "I told you I would be." "I know. I just kept thinking." Sat beside her. "About what?" She hesitated. "About whether you still want this." The old weight returned to the room. He realized then that even with understanding and effort, the fear inside her was still powerful. and he also realized how tired he was. That night, while she slept, he lay awake and faced a truth he had been avoiding. Love alone was not enough if both people were slowly breaking under its weight. The next morning told her he needed some space. Not to end things, not to run away. Just a few days to breathe, to clear his thoughts, to remember who he was outside of fear and worry. Mara's face went pale. "You're leaving?" she said. "I'm taking space," he replied. "There's a difference." She nodded, but he could see the storm building in her eyes. He packed a small bag and went to stay with his brother. Those few days changed everything. Without the constant tension, he felt something return inside him, clarity. He laughed more easily. He slept better. He remembered what it felt like to exist without carrying another person's fear. Every second. But he also missed her. He missed her voice in the kitchen, her quiet jokes, the way she always knew when he was tired before he said anything. When they finally met again, they sat in a small park near their apartment. The trees were full of wind, leaves moving like whispers around them. "I don't want to lose you," Mara said. Her voice was steady, but her hands trembled. "I don't want to lose myself," he answered. They sat in silence for a long time. Finally, she spoke. "I think I need help." He looked at her. "I can't keep living like this," she said. "I'm tired of being scared of everyone and everything." That was the moment he knew they still had a chance. She began speaking with a counselor. Slowly, carefully, she started untangling the fear she had carried for so long. Some days she came home quiet. Some days she cried. Some days she smiled with a new kind of light in her eyes. He stayed patient. He stayed present. But he also stayed honest. They learned how to talk without hurting each other, how to pause before reacting, how to name fear instead of hiding it behind anger or silence. The change was not dramatic. It was quiet, steady. Mara still struggled sometimes when he spent time with others, but now she said it out loud. "I'm feeling scared." Instead of turning cold, and he learned how to comfort her without disappearing himself. One evening, months later, they hosted a small dinner. His friends came. Laughter filled the room. Mara moved through the evening a little stiff, a little nervous, but she stayed. She smiled. She listened. When everyone left, she leaned against him and said, "I did it." He smiled. "You did." They were not perfect. They were not finished healing, but they were finally moving forward together instead of pulling each other apart. Time passed. Not quickly, not easily, but steadily. The months that followed were filled with small victories. Quiet mornings where they drank coffee without tension. Long walks where no one felt rushed to explain themselves. Evenings where laughter returned without fear waiting in the corner. Mara was changing not into someone new, but into who she had always wanted to be before fear shaped her choices. She still had difficult days, but now she faced them with words instead of walls. He noticed the difference in everything. When his phone rang, she no longer stiffened. When friends invited them out, she no longer searched for reasons to avoid it. When his family came over, she welcomed them, sometimes nervous, but always trying. One afternoon, his mother hugged Mara goodbye and whispered, "I'm proud of you." Mara's eyes filled with tears. Later that night, she told him, "No one ever said that to me before," held her hand. "They will say it again." They began building something that felt real, not perfect, but honest. They argued sometimes. They misunderstood each other sometimes, but they always returned to the same place, the truth. One night, sitting on the balcony under a sky full of stars, Mara spoke quietly. "I used to think love meant holding on as tight as possible," she said. "Now I think it means learning how to breathe together." He smiled. "That's the best definition I've ever heard." She rested her head on his shoulder. The wind moved gently around them, the world peaceful for once. He thought about the man he had been at the beginning of this story, the one who felt lost, confused, and slowly disappearing. He could hardly recognize that person now. He had learned that loving someone did not mean losing yourself. It meant growing with them, even when the path was uncomfortable. Months later, they hosted another gathering. This time, Mara laughed freely. She talked with his friends. She teased his sister. The room felt warm and alive. As the night ended, Jake pulled him aside and said, "Whatever you two did, it worked." He looked across the room at Mara, who was helping his mother gather plates. "Yeah," he said quietly. "It really did." When the house was finally quiet, Mara sat beside him on the couch. "Thank you for not giving up on me," she said. He shook his head. "Thank you for not giving up on yourself." They did not pretend everything would always be easy. They knew life would test them again. But now, they trusted each other enough to face it together. In the end, he understood something simple but powerful. She had not been angry at the world. She had been afraid of losing her place in it. And once she learned that love does not vanish when it is shared, everything changed. The story did not end with perfection. It ended with hope. And sometimes, that is the most beautiful ending of all.